Have you ever been struck by lightning? My friend Mandy and I were mountain biking in a deep ravine in Jackson, Wyoming, which meant we did not see the storm clouds coming. Just like that, we heard loud thunder, and I said to Mandy, "We need to turn this party around." Bam! Lightning hit near my leg, blinding me. It was so bright. I screamed loudly and frantically looked for Mandy just to make sure she was okay. Pain and heat pulsed through my body. My ears were blown out, and my fingertips were hot from holding the brake levers of my mountain bike. Astonishingly, we were both still on our bikes, so we hauled back to the trailhead as fast as we could while hail pummeled our bare skin. We got back to the trailhead covered in mud, frazzled. We were shaking, and we stopped and looked at each other, amazed we were still alive. Oh man, I did not sleep though for 3 days after that because of the charge from that lightning bolt. I wasn't always so lucky. 17 years later, I was 42 years old and in the best shape of my life. I was mountain biking, hiking, or skiing almost every day, depending on the season. So when I started having pain in my chest and breathlessness, I ignored it and kept going. And even as it was worsening, I still ignored it. When my husband begged me to go to the ER, I met him with excuses. Yet eventually I gave in, but we got no answers. Then, during a climb up Idaho's tallest peak, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. So a couple of more cardiologist visits later, he just insisted that I only had anxiety and I needed to see a therapist. I already had been treated for anxiety and I already had a therapist. But I kept being the squeaky wheel and bugging him. Eventually, the cardiologist relented and put me through a series of tests where we learned I had a bicuspid aortic valve, I had undersized coronary arteries, and 3 of those coronary arteries were trapped in my heart muscle, called myocardial bridging. Basically, my heart was a dumpster fire. And even though the heart CT showed us all of that, he still insisted I just needed to see a therapist. I already had a therapist. So feeling incredibly invalidated, terrified, frustrated, I got on Facebook. And it was on Facebook where I found a support group for all of my congenital defects. And in that Facebook support group, I learned how to advocate for myself and that I needed specific testing to prove the myocardial bridges were the problem. 5 months later, I'm checking in for open heart surgery. I'm laying on the gurney outside the operating room when my surgeon brings me a clipboard asking me to sign a piece of paper acknowledging I could die in open heart surgery. And then he left me alone. I had 5 minutes to watch the sunrise over the Wasatch Range east of Salt Lake City. I'll never forget it. The mountains were lit up in the most majestic purple color. I could feel my hospital gown, the bed sheets. I was totally present. And in that moment, this peace washed over me I'd never felt before. And I knew I was going to be okay no matter which direction it went. So I took a trip to the end of my life, which apparently could be soon. And I got really curious and courageous and asked myself if I had any regrets. I had 2 of them. I hadn't skied enough. Even though I had been a ski instructor and lived in a ski town for over 20 years. And I hadn't written a book, which had been a lifelong dream. That's all I could think of in the moment. I wasn't worried about money, social media followers, political issues around the world. Why hadn't I become an influencer yet? Literally nothing else came to mind. I just wanted to write a book and ski more. And in that moment, I learned what is important and what is not important. It showed me what is okay and what is not okay. And then I thought about how much I had loved and had been loved. Life was as simple and clear as it had ever been. And to this day, I'm more curious about what I was not thinking about than what I was thinking about. Because that just showed me what I'd been wasting my time and energy on instead of focusing on what had brought me true purpose and joy. Over the next year through my recovery, I had 2 more surprise surgeries, and my mom died unexpectedly. I still wrote a 94,000-word book and finished it on the 1-year anniversary of her death. Oh. Thank you. Here's what I came away with. I judge less, and I'm quicker to love. I went from ignoring my body to listening to it. Gone is the reserved, closed-minded, black and white thinking. I now focus on what brings me purpose and joy and what fully resonates with my body, like writing and starting a podcast, because I am open to the messages my higher self gives me of what is the next right thing to do. I needed to have my heart physically opened because that was the only way I could learn to live truly open-heartedly. Now my life is in Technicolor. The practice dying moment in my life has filled me with endless gratitude. It's a universal theme that once faced with death and dying, things become much clearer. I didn't realize that until I was faced with it. I was out of options. I wasn't able to distract myself in those last few moments. What is practicing dying? For me, it wasn't about skiing or writing a book. I realized I did a year-long deep dive into asking the deeper questions. And for me, skiing meant not enough joy. Then I had to get curious about how can I infuse joy through all the other aspects of my life. And when it came to writing a book, I realized the importance of shared experiences. So I launched a podcast for heart patients their caregivers, and medical teams. In that moment, when you think this could be it, what are your questions? What are your regrets? What comes up? The things that don't come up probably aren't that important. By practicing dying, we can get to the heart of what truly matters. So, what are the steps to practicing dying? 1, visualize someone has just said, "You're going to die in the next 5 minutes." Close your eyes, hear them saying it to you. Feel the experience and notice your emotions. 2, answer the question, what do I regret? Write it down without editing or censoring it. No matter how weird, uncomfortable, unlikely, just write it down. 3, get curious about the things you didn't say, and then be willing to examine whether the things you thought were priorities or were important truly should be priorities or should be important. By practicing dying and asking ourselves the most important question ever, we're able to pivot our lives to what really matters. So grab a journal, set a timer for 5 minutes. Visualize someone has just given you a sheet of paper, asking you to sign and acknowledge that you could be dead in the next 5 minutes. And then answer the question, what do I regret? Do this daily until you get to the real answers for your life. By practicing dying, we won't be the ones on our deathbeds filled with regret. We will be the ones who have lived with vision, purpose, true joy, and boundless love.